What's up, guys? Welcome back to Kitchen Court Cases, where we watch court in my kitchen. And tonight, I have for you a tree-killing TPO. It's hard to make sense of, but you'll see what I mean. It is full of allegations left, right, and center, and I hope you enjoy.
This is matter of Todd Stoltz, petitioner Donna Weiss, W-I-E-S-E, and Harold Weiss, case number 23-000204. Mr. Stoltz, are you going to testify in this matter today?
Yes.
All right, raise your right hand. Mr. and Mrs. Weiss, would you raise your right hands as well? You swear or affirm to tell the truth in all matters related to this issue pending before the court today?
I do, Your Honor.
I do. All right, thank you. All right, Mr. Stoltz, you're the petitioner. You go first.
I am seeking this restraining order, this harassment and trespassing on my land and property, and all this stuff has been going on for 4 years, and I just want it to stop. And like my papers say, I just want to live in peace and feel that I can go out in my yard and walk to the mailbox and you know, without harassment and not feeling, you know, scared.
All right, can you tell me what's been going on that scares you? What's the behavior that scares you?
He has followed me to my mailbox and harassed me. They have threatened, you know, he told me that he could pay somebody with a bag of dope and make me disappear. He has come into my house without knocking and went through my kitchen and my refrigerator and freezer. And I finally stood up and told him to leave, and he did leave. He came over to my house 3 times, I recall, and calling me out, wanting to fight me. And, you know, and it goes on and on and on. They have put up a fence. They have tried to take some of my property. They have finally put up a fence, and they hired a surveyor. They said they had hired a survey friend and had their property surveyed, but there was no stakes put in the ground, nothing. And so with me and my stepkids, we finally had to tell them, we will place a lawsuit on you if you put your fence on my side of the trees, and we will place a lawsuit. And they pulled back and put a half a fence up on the property line. And so far we've kept them off the property line, which is I'm calling mine. And that's fine. If they want to put up a fence, like we said in our application, you know, get a surveyor, have it surveyed, register it, and then put your fence up. But this harassment and, you know, and coming on to my property anytime they feel like they want to, it's unbearable, unbelievable.
When was the last time they came onto your property uninvited?
This last time I called the sheriff. I was out mowing my lawn. I stopped my lawnmower to move my garden hose. That's when Harold started yelling at me to remove my fence post that I had put up. I ignored him, was going to continue mowing, and then that's when he came onto my property, ripped some of my fence posts up, throw them in my yard. And so I went and got my fence post pounder and was going to put them back up. And then that's when they started accusing me that, oh, that's their fence post pounder and I stole it from him. That's when I put everything down. I went into the house and then I called the sheriff.
And when was that?
Last
Week, last month, last year?
Last week.
That before you filed this action?
Yes. They're just obsessed with this property line thing. I wish they would go hire a surveyor and get it done. Last night, my friend and I were out visiting on my porch. They're circling our block, trying to look for a property line stake or whatever they're doing. And, and it's just back and forth and up and down. And for Pete's sake, go hire a surveyor and get it done. They have put road construction cones out in the easement road. They put them up for a while. They pull them back. They put them up. They start little. Now they're 4-foot road construction and blocking my access into my driveway. I have a plot map up there that says right on it that everybody should have access to their property off of Sargent Road. Well, I'm the only one that doesn't have access to my road, that's my driveway that's been there since before I got there, and I've been there over 20 years. And it just,
so how do you access your property if you're not from
I have to
Sargent
drive
Road?
around the cones, and then I have a new trail onto my lawn to get into my yard. Because I know if I just didn't obey the law or whatever and went and moved their cones, that they would just be right back up. That's how cantankerous they are, and I would get nowhere there. So I just been avoiding them and trying to do the right thing and drive around the cones. And my neighbors say, ask me what's going on, and I tell them, and I wait for a reaction from them, and their reaction is, well, thankful he's doing that to you and leaving us alone, and I know they're joking with me and, trying to make light of this, but, this is, it's horrible.
All right, Mr. Ellington, do you want to respond?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. I'll be brief. As I've given the court the respondent's declaration, and you've read it, so these people were good friends. And Mrs. Weesey is a certified nursing assistant, so she's a medical healthcare provider. Back in 2018, they were actually going over to his house. They were helping him. They were buying him groceries. They would go through his cupboards and his refrigerator and to check what he needed from the grocery store. And they had a key to his house. So the entries that he alleges in his petition, those were all with consent. And so I'll let Mr. Weesey address the fence post in a moment, but all of the facts that he's suggested, are within their lawful capacity. I did offer Exhibit 1, which is the property line, and you can see where his driveway cuts the corner across the front of their property. And their concern was that they may lose legal ownership of that if they continue to allow him to cut across that front corner. And we've talked about whether or not that's a real loss or whether it's just a technical loss, but it is within their property right. And we acknowledge that the property survey was not a recorded survey. It was done professionally, but it wasn't hired for recording purposes. Now, as far as his allegations, there is absolutely nothing in his petition or his testimony that refers to Mrs. Weesey. And so she is fearful that any order against her would prohibit her from working as a certified nursing assistant if there was an active restraining order in place, because she has to disclose that in her job. And with no facts being alleged against her, for sure, I would ask that the petition against her be dismissed. With reference to the allegations against Mr. Weesey, there's the threats of the bag of dope that he denies that ever occurred. his threats to kill is reference to him driving stakes into the ground to try to kill the large trees that are down the property line inside the Weesey property. But he's driving the stakes into the roots, and I'm not sure why. Maybe they're fence post attempts, but they're not healthy for trees to drive stakes into the trees. And I'm going to let Mr. Weesey address. Go ahead.
Let me ask, who's driving the stakes into the trees? Mr. Weesey or Mr. Stoltz?
No, Mr. Stoltz has been driving stakes into the trees.
All right, thank you. Go ahead.
And then I'm going to let Mr. Weesey address whether or not he ever went on. I'll let Mr. Weesey address whether he's ever gone on to Mr. Stoltz's property in any recent terms. And Mr. Stoltz, I'm sorry, the Weeseys did call the police on July 1 as well, because when they were putting up their temporary fence, they were fearful that he was acting irrational and they weren't sure what he was going to do. So they called the police, and the police report is referenced in our declaration in response. And so, Mr. Weesey, can you tell the judge, in reference to Mr. Stoltz's testimony, that you came onto his property to pull up fence posts? Can you just respond to that and explain to the court if you had any role in that?
No, we have never removed any of his fence posts there, because they're on his side of the trees, but they're going into the roots. I don't want to fight over property lines. I've already had a surveyor survey it, and at that time I told Mr. Schultz that we could get it surveyed so that we would both know where it was for relatively cheap. I said, he's a friend of mine, he's a surveyor, he works for the state. I have put up concrete, did labor, no non-cash value or nothing. But I am willing to have it recertified, get another surveyor in there and pay for that, as instructed from you.
Mr. Weesey, at any point in time, did you threaten Mr. Stoltz?
No, sir.
At any point in time on July 1st or in the last 2 or 3 weeks, did you go onto his property without his permission?
No, sir.
Okay, I have no other questions, Your Honor.
Do you, Mr. Ellington, you have any questions for Mr. Stoltz?
No, I do not.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Stoltz, you want to respond to anything that was said by Mr. Ellington and or Mr. Weesey?
Yes, they said that I was driving the stakes into the trees. I did not drive any stakes in to harm them trees. I drove them in there to show my property line. I have put up no trespassing signs. I have asked them not to come on my property. I have told them not to come on my property. And I was not trying to harm the trees. And if anything kills them trees, there are vines growing up them trees, and that's what will kill them trees. But I had no intention of killing the trees. And so no there. And yes, he did come on my property he had to come on my property to pull up the fence post. So him not coming on, and as far as verbally threatened me, no, he didn't. And but it just goes on and on.
I'm sorry, say that again. Knowingly threatened you, he didn't do that?
Not verbally threaten me, he didn't. And I didn't verbally threaten him. I didn't say anything to them that day. Your Honor, as far as him saying that they have taken care of me, we wrote in the statement that I've never been incapacitated, that I have never been able to take care of myself. They have never bought me groceries. They have never done any of that. They didn't have my house key. They might have known where my house key was hanging. And but the day that he came into my house, this is my friend that was there visiting that morning, and his name is Roger Chappelle, and he will tell you what had happened that morning that he came into my house.
Mr. Chappelle, how do you spell your last name?
Chappell.
Okay. And if you're going to testify, I'm going to need you to swear to tell the truth, swear or affirm to tell the truth in all matters related to this issue today. All right. All right. So what can you tell us?
Tanya told me it had some trouble with Harry, Luis, Mr. Luis. And I was sitting there, he had lost his spouse. We do a grief share class, and I was giving them some prayer and counseling, and all of a sudden, drunk Harry bursts in, doesn't say anything to us, walks past us, starts going through his kitchen cupboards, looks at his refrigerator, goes back to the cupboards, pulled out, I believe, a can of sardines, and says, "Are you going to eat this?" And Mr. Stoltz was physically, he could have done push-ups, sit-ups, whatever at that point in his life. He's physically not been incapacitated at all. On the night of the cupboards that they claimed they were looking for groceries from the store, I mean, he's as healthy as he is today. I mean, we're old, but
When did this occur?
I have to say around 3 years ago.
A couple of years ago.
And I've been a witness to this ongoing thing and tried to encourage my brother to restrain. He does not want to be here today. And draft his rebuttal to the paperwork that
I think, excuse me, a thing that I did not mention, I had another friend over, we were changing the baluster lights in my shop one day, and Mrs. Weesey came over to my shop. You could tell in her voice that she was not happy, and told me that for me to get my company's car out of her driveway. I said, my company would not park in your driveway. And I didn't know it was going. Finally, I looked out the garage door, and sure, there was a car over there in their driveway. I told her, it's not my company. And so she left. She came back again, more angrier, and said, you need to get your company's car out of my driveway, or I'm calling the sheriff's department, and I'm going to get a tow truck and have it towed. I told her, go ahead, it's not my company. And she finally left, and come to find out, a short time later, this car that was parked in their driveway was some Mormon missionaries, friends that they knew. And while she wasn't at home at the time, they went out knocking on doors. And when they finally did come back to their car, she found out whose car it was. And they told her they were sorry that they parked their car in their driveway, and ended up shoveling the ice and snow out of their driveway for the apology. But yet, did she come over and apologize to me or say anything? No.
When did that occur?
Probably 3 years ago. And of course, my other friend that was, with me, he was just like, holy buckets, I mean.
Mr. Ellington, any questions you have for Mr. Chappelle?
No, I'll just have a few comments when you're ready.
Ellington, I'm ready to hear your comments.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, first and foremost, Mr. Stoltz testified today that there have been no threats made. And so that certainly contradicts some of the allegations in his petition. Additionally, he does reference and acknowledge that some of these incidences that are alleged occurred 2 and 3 years ago. And that's consistent with the declaration in response by my clients. There's no facts or evidence before the court of anything recent that shows any ongoing pattern of conduct that seriously annoys, threatens, harasses, or is in violation of the anti-harassment statute. And so the good news is both parties expressed a desire to have a certified survey done to put this issue to rest. And so perhaps, if they have a little guidance, and I've talked to my clients about pursuing legally a correct property line survey and having someone communicate with Mr. Stoltz in a amicable, professional way, so that these two neighbors can just resolve this issue and hopefully restore the friendship that they once had. But given what's gone on today and what's in the petition and before the court, I would ask Your Honor to dismiss both of these petitions at this time.
Thank you. Mr. Ellington, I would have a question for your client, if that's all right.
Yeah, go ahead.
What about the reference, Mr. Weesey, that Mr. Chappelle made here about drunk Harry coming into Mr. Stoltz's house 3 years ago?
Are you talking to me, Your Honor?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. No, that never happened. And when he called the sheriff just recently, he told the sheriff that I was drunk and harassing him and all that. That was just about a week ago. And the sheriff came out there
And 3 years ago?
and 2 years ago too?
No.
Oh,
He's
no.
asking about 3 years ago when you went into his house.
No, I never went in his house 2 years ago. It was, what? When we moved in?
18.
Yeah,
It was actually 2018 when I was helping him with his diabetes and
that,
his troubles that he was having with his medical problems, his insurance, his diabetes, his insulin. He asked me to come and check on him in case he went into a diabetic coma, a diabetic shock, because he was having a little bit of trouble with that.
we have invited him for
Oh,
Christmas and Thanksgiving, and he did also.
Yeah.
At the beginning of finding out that he was sick, I actually picked him off the floor and helped revive him.
Yeah.
So, you know,
And we
I
were
want to be
making
friends, and I am, you know, I'm on the road 5 days a week. I worry. But, and the
All right.
fact,
Thank you, Mr. Weesey.
Your Honor, I have a doctor that I've been with, and he regulates my diabetes, and together we work, through this, and there is no reason why I would have her, even if she's claiming to be a nurse, to help me in any way.
So your testimony is that in 2018, 2019, they never came over, never helped you with medical issues, never helped you with groceries,
No,
none of that.
no. They did not help me.
He's-
My health hasn't changed. I've had diabetes and I struggle with it, like all diabetics do, and I have medication. I do my insulin. I have good days, bad days, but nothing that anybody has to come over and help me with. I've always been able to go to the grocery store and buy my groceries. If I was to ask anybody to buy my groceries, it would be my good friend Roger, who's been my friend for years, and he would be the one I would ask.
Is it accurate, Mr. Ellington said at the beginning that at some point in time you were friends with the Weeseys?
Yes, when they moved in, they came over and introduced me and introduced themselves to me. And we were neighbors, friends. And then they bought a vehicle from me. I was going to put my vehicle up for sale. They heard about it and they wanted to buy it. They came over, paid cash for it, bought the vehicle, and everything was going great. But like a year and some months later, something happened to this vehicle. I don't know what it is. And they wanted to come back on me for that. And the neighbor said, you can't come back on him for that. You've owned that vehicle for over a year. And, and then it's kind of has, taken off from there, them buying this vehicle. And I mean,
How long ago was that?
that was in 2019.
How long have you been neighbors? How many years?
Approximately 4 years. They claim they've been there 6, but I'm saying like 4 years, I'm guessing. It was in 2018 when they moved in, and I couldn't tell you when, but it was 2018. 2019, I sold them the truck, and so we weren't friends for very long. I mean, it went downhill from there, and it stayed downhill.
And you said you called the sheriff last week when you claimed that Mr. Weesey came on your property and pulled up fence posts.
Yes, sir.
Those fence posts put in where you think the property line is?
Yes, sir.
So is it fair to say there might be a dispute as to whether that's the property line or not?
There could be, but the neighbor lady that lived there before, we were very close. And when we moved in, we asked if there was any property lines, and she told us no, that they had planted the trees there. And that was bordering the property line. And so we've always understood that them trees were, that side was their side and this side was our side.
Did you ever see the survey that Mr. Weesey had done by a friend of his?
I'd never seen it. They would never show me any stakes. They would never show me anything. It was all a big secret. I don't even know if their surveyor was certified, a real surveyor, and nothing. There was never no stakes planted. And I even called them out on it. And when they were trying to put up the fence, that was one of my statements is no, you got to show me stakes and you have to have it registered. And I went up to the county and they were, I don't know if they didn't like what his surveyor showed them or what, but they were just pushing forward and saying, no, our property is on this side of the trees. And that's when I had to come to them with I will place a lawsuit on you if this goes forward.
Your Honor, just a brief response.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Ellington.
Just as an offer of proof, the informal survey that we recognized and tell the court up front was not recorded, but there were survey stakes. And then Mr. and Mrs. Weiss noticed that at some point they had been removed. We don't know how or why.
All right.
Anyway, again, all of this testimony here really refers to 3 and 4 years ago.
There are still 3 survey marks there.
Okay.
Mr. Schultz, you said they put up half a fence.
Yes,
Do you believe that half a fence is on their side or your side of the property line?
I don't know. What fence they got up, I would be happy with that as long as they turn and go towards their trees, the trees that were planted, angle back towards their property. If they go back on their side of the trees and put up their fence, that is fine.
Your Honor, our Exhibit 3 attached to the declaration shows the fence, and it's a temporary type kennel fence that's well inside the tree line.
And that's fine where they got their temporary fence. That's what I've asked too, is they stay on that side. And the fence that they put up, I don't want to fight over this. We've only got so many years left on this earth, and I'm just wanting to peacefully get through them and get out of here.
Well, that would be the hope for the court as well in this matter. So here's what I'm going to do. I've listened to Mr. Stoltz, the things that you've testified to, what Mr. Chappelle has testified to, what Attorney Ellington has submitted, and what Mr. Weesey has submitted at this point, and Mrs. Weesey as well. There are a lot of issues here that are going to be unresolved in terms of, did they help provide some medical assistance to you, some other kinds of things? You're saying no, they're saying yes. not dispositive of anything in this case. The issues about the property line seem to be the real key to what's going on here right now and why you folks are all in court at this time. And that is relatively simply resolved, not by this court, because we don't decide property issues. But I believe I heard Mr. Weesey say that he's prepared to have a proper survey done, registered by a registered surveyor, licensed surveyor, and provide that to a copy of that to Mr. Stoltz so he can see, so the parties can resolve that in some way. Now, they might not need to be face-to-face to resolve that. There may be an intermediary that's necessary to do that, but that sounds like that might be the idea, the best idea to kind of resolve some of those issues. You know, there's going to be an ongoing issue, I guess, with the driveway. Looks like that's been there for a while. I don't know the answer to that. That's, again, beyond the scope of this court today. I do believe that Mr. Ellington's statements are persuasive in a couple matters. Number one, as far as Mrs. Weesey is concerned, I don't see anything here that would subject her to having an anti-harassment order entered against her. As far as Mr. Weesey is concerned, again, Mr. Ellington's statements are pretty clear. I do believe that Mr. Stoltz has testified that there have been no threats made. It doesn't seem to be a recent pattern of conduct, which is required under the statute in order for an order to be entered. I think, again, the key here is for these parties to find some way to work out the issue with the fence and the trees, whether they're on one side or the other. I think nobody should put in any fence posts until an appropriate survey is complete.
But they have already put in half a fence, though.
From this point forward, nobody puts in any fence posts. You don't put any in near the roots of trees. They don't put any in down at the end of the road by where your driveway is. We let that all sit and percolate until the parties figure out a way, you know, to resolve it. And again, that won't be here. You won't come back to this court and say, I have a survey, we have this piece of property, this, that, and the other thing. That's going to go to a court of a different jurisdiction than this. So my conclusion at this time is I do not find by a preponderance of the evidence, Mr. Stoltz, that there is a basis for an anti-harassment order against either Mr. or Mrs. Weesey. So I'm not going to enter an order today. I'm going to dismiss your petition. You always have the right to file again. If as a result of this, you guys go back to your properties and something starts over again, Mr. Weesey does something else or Mrs. Weesey does something, you can always refile this petition if in fact there's been a threat or a pattern of behavior that is threatening to you under the circumstances. I think the parties have had a good explanation of what they believe has happened in the past and what needs to be done at this time. I say, let the past be the past. Figure out a way to work at least together cooperatively to figure out this fence issue and the driveway issue in the future.
Yes, because I don't want this that you don't give me anything, and then 2 days later the cones are back up there, because this has gone on before since then. You know, I mean, I tell them.
Yeah, the cone issue is a difficult one. I'm not sure where all that fits with this because
you can see on that plot map, the road should be going straight in, but for some reason the road has been like a river, you know, that was made that way. And if the road was straight, it would take up more of their property. So I didn't put my driveway.
Take up more of their property, take up less of their property.
Huh?
It would take up less of their property. Right
Okay.
now, it cuts across part of their property, at least what I could see.
The road goes around their property. It should go straight through their property. Because of the foliage, it's been diverted from alignment probably 20, 30 feet in places.
Well, then that's again a different issue. What I'm seeing from the exhibits that were presented by the Weeseys, it looks like a piece of the road of your driveway cuts across the very edge of their property. And that's looked like to me where the cones were. So I don't know about what else happened out on Sergeant Road. That's a different issue. And again, not something within the scope or jurisdiction of this court today. But that's something that you obviously should try to get worked out. So, Mr. Weesey, I would suggest, I'm not ordering anything here, but I would suggest you not interfere with his ongoing access to the property that he's apparently been exercising for how many years you lived there?
Over 20.
Over 20 years, if that's been the case.
And I want this trespassing to stop. For no reason, no whatsoever coming on my property.
Your Honor, Attorney Ellington, Your Honor, I'm late for another hearing. If the court's ruled, can we stop the testimony?
We can. That'll be all in terms of testimony. I'm going to prepare the order at this time.
Thank you,
So,
Your
Mr.
Honor.
Ellington, you can leave if you wish. Mr. Weesey can stay.
Well, guys, what did you think about that? It was a long hearing, and the judge looked done by the end of it. I don't think the petitioner really understood. Let me just say, I'm glad I don't live in their neighborhood. Oh my gosh. Guys, I would love to hear what you thought about this case down below in the comments section. And have you had any crazy neighbors come and do anything like that before? Love to hear about it. Thanks again for tuning in. Please don't be a dick. Give the like a click. Talk to you soon. Bye.